And I do want to let my subscribers and people who do follow me and do want to know what's going on. Okay, so on the 15th, I have my planner. What Monday will be the 5th. So on the 15th, I do have a return notice to go back to court. Now, what happened was I did not take a public defender. I have had experiences of public defenders actually completely sabotage me. I did not take the plead bargain because to me, this seemed really unethical and very against all freedom of justice, especially when it comes to people who have no home. And I was given a citation about basically sleeping in public, but in my perspective, I'm doing a peaceful protest of not being able to get the resourceful help needed so that I'm supposedly not a problem and committing city ordinance about sleeping in public when our resources are not funding nor are they supporting people enough who fall through the cracks. Um, and being able to be financially not on the streets. Now, I am in a sober living, so I do have paperwork that I am going to present to the court of being in a program and being in a city house. So, not really sleeping out in public. But if you do not have a job or are able to establish a financial grounding to keep yourself off the streets or have some sort of mental condition that makes it hard for you to hold a job, which we see a lot of people on the streets with this, including disabled people whose disability doesn't really support the high payments of being able to stay off the streets, no matter the issues relating to drugs or emotional breakdowns. Um, They gave me two chances to take the plea to just let it go away and have it on my record. Now, when you're someone that constantly ends up on the streets because of being so in depthly different, that it's hard for you to stabilize a financial stability, you end up back homeless when you don't have the money to be able to keep yourself off the streets. So, this is something that gets worse. You are penalized more legally because of being not really being able to have the financial means of staying set off the streets. And this accumulates. So then you get more time over this. So I decided to fight this because I can't have that accumulate and then end up more in time and not being able to give the chances to gain more stability in my life. Started to feel like I'm being set up for failure in all so many ways, while they're pressurizing me through psychologists to take medications for an issue that is not just me. Okay. And if I'm so mentally incapable, then why is it that I can clearly see the dysfunctions of our justice system that so many stand up for and then get suppressed because it doesn't follow within the accumulation of money that they use with vulnerable people who obviously are, I guess, aren't as obedient as they would like them to be. During court, I have seen people with lawyers or public defenders be able to take this to trial. The judge straight up told me, I'm not giving you a trial. We're just going to take this to, or I'm not giving you a jury trial. We're just going to take this to trial. Why is it because I didn't take a public defender, I don't deserve a jury trial? Because I'm just representing myself? And why is it that I get more disrespect from these judges that obviously know what they're doing or being bribed? So you're allowing more bribing going on because of people wanting to stand up for their rights and stand up for the injustice that's going on because morality wants to be overlooked. And then you want to say, I'm not upholding the Eighth Amendment, my right to be able to do as I need, and my right to be able to have support for being so different. My experiences in being in this sober living place, others are getting more help when it comes to jobs, whether I have tattoos on my face or not. You know how hard it is to be able to get a job in the tattoo field, even though I wanted to be more Christian and change my life and didn't want to go that route? And it's becoming more apparent to me that it's harder for me to get a job because of the tattoos. But I established a very good question as of my tattoos on my face are only 4 years old and I've been homeless on and off for about 10. So, how is my tattoos on my face the exemplar of not being able to be financially stable? To me, that's not true. You have a lot of people having difficulties being financially stable and a skyrocketing of people wanting therapy and it being backed up months at a time and not being able to have access to the things they need. And as that has been brought to my attention, it is very difficult for some of these resources to do the things that is needed for the vulnerable when they're not getting funded or there's a lot of funding going missing. And in my experience, when it comes to some of these shelters, they say they have donations, but when you go and ask for them, it's either we don't have it for you or you have closets full of clothes, but we ain't got clothes to give you, or apparently you have to like go and ask the person that's above everyone else when these donations are supposed to be readily given. And in my observance, I feel that they hoard these donations just to be able to say, we have donations, while you're only giving them to specific people you choose to give them to. And in my experience, I have seen someone literally sleep on the ground in front of a resource building, not even help being given food. They have to ask other people that are homeless to bring them food. While like they're being told to just get in their wheelchair and then they just go on and get it themselves, when this is obviously a very difficult thing most of the time when it comes to the vulnerably disabled. Um, and in my experience, they use people who are volunteering and training them in a way to be very non-compassionate towards issues. And in my experience, it has felt created in a way of a mental hospital without a mental hospital building, because some of these people are not mentally, sort of say, have the capacity to be able to establish an everyday living not being on the streets. And with not being given the same opportunities other people have been given, like being able to have the paper to pass by a speedy trial, and being given a jury trial out of my rights to be able to do so, I was not given that capability. While they decide to talk about certain cases under white noise with a judge, I don't see how you can call it a justice system when you target people that aren't obedient to the way you want to structuralize obediency with everyone and create more money by literally targeting vulnerable people and putting them in jail. So, with this, saying all of this, I do have court on the 15th. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Um, if they do put me in jail, I could lose everything just for standing up for my own rights and for going to resources and not getting the grounding to have more of a self confidence in bringing stability into my life with needing help while they say we're here to help you as long as you want to help yourself. Sure. Okay. So, what if I were to go to this trial, show you all these papers, and you're just going to put me in jail anyway? Oh, and it's okay because it could be for a few days or it could be for 2 weeks because when you don't take the plead, they slam you with the most that they can give you because you didn't take the plead. Because I didn't sign over my rights to you. Okay. And if I do end up back on the street, which last time I got arrested, my purse was stolen, but I ain't got the money to fight that and get evidence in the jail system where you got COs going through your stuff and then saying, oh, you can't have this and you can't have this. They took both my pepper sprays and then released me out into the streets in the evening while you have a lot of danger going on in downtown of Jacksonville. And this is the Jacksonville court system. So I will label it. I will say everything that is. And I have a paper here for it, okay? So you think it's okay to put females out in the middle of the night in downtown without giving them any way to be able to protect themselves from the very issues you already know what's going on. So you're taking my capabilities of being able to defend and protect myself. And on top of that, when I've had difficulties of other homeless people threatening my life with a bat, literally sexually giving me issues when it comes to masturbating purposefully right next to me, literally coming to the spot just to come and masturbate. This may be an issue for you, but you can go somewhere else, and do your masturbation instead of literally going right next to females when there's not much or much direction you can go. So, once again, it is an injustice and it creates trauma. And it's at this point where it is now a chronic trauma you are creating for the vulnerable who don't have money. And then you want to make money off of the vulnerable and disabled. To me, this seems like a lot of issues that you are breaking when it comes to the rights of the disabled. Just even leaving them homeless, not even being able to get any help, no matter the dysfunctions of their personality and mental structures or emotional structures. You're taking advantage of the fact that they have difficulties, that they're vulnerable people, just because they don't have money or money for a lawyer to be able to stand up for them. While they say, oh, there's lawyers out there pro bono, you know how difficult it is to actually get a lawyer to pro bono you, especially when you're standing up for your human justice rights, while they willingly know that the justice system don't uphold moral rights when it comes to the very fact that this is part of humanity and you establish this for protection upon your people, and then you use it against your vulnerable and then try to in my opinion, manipulate the masses into pointing their fingers at these vulnerable people. So I wanted to put out there on social media that, yeah, I am about to go to court. I am not sure what's going to happen. And on top of that, how is it that I was able to defeat this very issue of being arrested for sleeping on the streets in public? Because I didn't want to be shoved into the woods where a lot of the heavy addicts are, because I was not an addict like that. And I was able to beat it in court before. So how is it okay to drop it in one direction and sense and you say it's illegal and it's something you have to uphold? But when it comes to another direction, and if you don't comply, we're going to sabotage you even more anyway. So to me, that as a result of said actions, you are using vulnerability to harm. And that is against the Eighth Amendment, even though you don't want to look at the morality standard of it. You just want to strictly go into the law of it, which is creating, like I said, a chronic abuse structure while you're pointing your fingers at these people. In my opinion, is psychological malpractice, because then you force these people into therapy or to see a psychologist, to go on medication to suppress the very feelings you are valid to have, while they teach you coping mechanisms to understand that your feelings are valid, but their actions are a result of how your feelings are not valid, while they allow comments to tear people down for speaking about these issues and try to divert you from thoroughly expressing a point of a dysfunction in said system when justice is supposed to be there. Justice is justice. That doesn't mean just justice of the law. That means justice of a balance of what you need for law and moral compassion for issues that are also going on that these people want to overlook. And I just wanted to express, when it comes to the 15th and I lose everything and end up back homeless, well, at least I got to say my piece truthfully and not in a justice system where they constantly just tear you down for standing up for your own human rights. And feeling penalized for the way you're born, that's harmful. That's not only psychologically harmful, but as we've seen as a result, it is physically harmful, especially when you're taking people's ways of being able to defend themselves completely away and throwing it away in the trash. And stealing whatever you want from these people that end up in jail. And then constantly hearing stories about COs and cops just outright abusing and beating the shit out of people. You know how many people, older geriatrics people, who actually have laws against this, but they can't get help to be able to go after some of these cops that have literally beaten the shit out of them because they're a nuisance to them. I don't understand why you have your job if your job is a nuisance to you. And this is why some people who are very in depth and respectful and see these lack of grounding and not being so suppressively abusive, it's like excruciatingly heartbreaking. And just because I'm one of many that want to stand up for this, and what about all the advocates that try to stand up for this that are constantly being suppressed? And then we're allowed to protest people being mistreated from another country, but I'm not allowed to protest our very own people that we want to sit here, pick, prod, and blame them for even being homeless when obviously it's happening in more than just the state I'm in, which is in Florida. And we're being named one of the top three that's this horrible. So I wanted to be able to express that before I ended up going to court and could possibly what a public defender has expressed to me. If I don't take the plea, I could end up in jail for 2 weeks and then everything of mine is gone and worried about my phone being stolen because if they were willing to steal my purse, they're willing to steal anything I would use to be able to stand up or be an advocate for moral injustice and for the fact that we should be helping instead of condemning, and that they're using vulnerabilities as a way to be able to create more money. But that's just out of that's just also a opinion of certain things that I have over observance in cause and effect. And when it comes to cause and effect, those are the most important elements you need when it comes to a scientific understanding or a scientific breakthrough. It is your proof for that scientific breakthrough. Then how is this not proof for a justice system that a lot of people are realizing is very faulted, and yet they don't care and overlook this? But like everyone is shrugging off and saying, that's just how it is. That's how the world works. That's actually how we're allowing it to work. And that's actually in allowance of suppression, how we're allowing them to be able to totally just abuse the crap out of it. Because if you didn't have vulnerable people that need resourceful help, then you wouldn't need some of these resources, would you not? So, of course, you would need homeless people to be able to have shelters and to have funding, to make reason for funding, to make bigger buildings, because we don't have enough to be able to house some of these people. While you're not looking at the core issue as to why this is even being created in the first place. And why is it so important for the cops to constantly go and poke and prod at a bunch of homeless people when we've got already a lot of crime going on? But I guess y'all are just that bored in your jobs that you're more worried about homeless standing up for their rights than a bunch of random drug addicts? Because you don't force them into a rehab. No, because that's against their free will. But you force vulnerable people who have nowhere to go or have difficulties getting resourceful help and placement in a job that best befits the way they are, whether they want to be on medication or not. What leadership we have. But we don't even try to understand the reasons for this because there's so much fear going around about not being able to make your rent payments and having to overly work yourself and overwhelm human anatomy just to be able to make it in this world. How many people actually have a job and have to work so many hours, no time with your family, no time to be able to relax and distress properly because you're so worried about if you miss that hour, if you miss that day, you're going to lose your home. And it's interesting, I see more and more and more younger people ending up homeless, down to like kids running away from their parents because their parents are so stressed. They're so compressed. about just trying to do the right thing and keeping a roof over their families' heads. One having to have 2 to 3 jobs, the other one having to have 1 to 2 jobs. I mean, we've purposely eliminated certain people being able to be a stay-at-home parent to be there for their own children. And then we wonder why all our children are acting out. I mean, if you really like go through and start understanding the core inspiration of some of these shows we've become addicted to as society, like Stranger Things. And what about the tests that were going on when it came to gifted children and hearing those sounds and it sending them into an out of body experience? I was like, whoa, that's interesting. Because I was one of those children that went through all those tests. And come to think of it, I had an out of body experience after going through some of these tests, literally like seeing my whole being just casted in stars talking to consciousness, and then it being pressed upon you that it's a religious specification, and that if you're not of that religious specification, you are a condemned person and you're not good enough and you're nothing but Satan. Then why are you creating all these experiments anyway? To have more of an grounded understanding and consciousness? You really don't need all these experiments and harmful effects upon people and their natural connectivity of their brain and heart to figure out consciousness. Like, and then to literally pinpoint these issues are because of drugs. Well, your suppression is because of drugs. I mean, like, you want to pinpoint drugs on someone, but then you want to give them pharmaceutical drugs. Drugs are drugs, right? Some people, when it comes to being completely sober, they don't want to even take pharmaceutical drugs because it's still a drug. It's still an altering effect. And it's not full acceptance in who you are and the way you were born that God intended you to be, because it's completely suppressing something that is trying to wake up. But you just want to label them sick or incapable of living, and that if you take this drug, you'll completely be capable of living because you'll be so obedient and not worried about the effects of the wrongdoings of what you are becoming aware and observant to. Well, this makes sense why there's huge movements in a lot of this awakening of understanding and how we're treating one another. And that's one of my biggest things, is we really wouldn't be living in a world that feels nothing but hell if we didn't constantly control and try to suppress one another, but yet to help each other in their strengths and their differences and what fuels them, that brings happiness, instead of saying, if you suppress this, you will then be able to be happy, but that numbs it. While we want to push verbal discrimination upon indifference, and that someone just fits differently in a different type of job, but you can't be in that job because you don't have credentials, and if you don't get funding, then we can't help you. So then you leave that person there to end up on the streets because they can't just naturally be themselves. And that is condemnation. That's condemning someone for the makeup that your God said is there for a very specific reason. But we don't want to look at that. We just want to hurt people through comments and try to stop them from expressing exactly the dysfunction of what our system was meant to be there to be able to help us. Quite interesting. I just wanted to let my people know I have court on the 15th. I could end up in jail for like 2 weeks, apparently, if it doesn't get dropped. But since how it's a city ordinance, they can literally say law, 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 and we don't care about the trauma we create because of the imprinted law of lack of obedience. Because I want to live differently than what you expect of me, but yet I expect of you to do your job, and that's being totally like out of place. How am I speaking out of place if I have a cognitive understanding of your responsibilities? And if I was put in your place, I would literally think about this because of the fact that we work with people. Your support comes from the people. So if you don't have moral compass in this, you're harming your people while you're labeling them not capable and stealing their children on top of that. Because you want to label them not capable when you say you have resources for these things, but some are allowed to keep their children and go through uh, shelters with these children, but some are not allowed to do that. They get their children stripped from them right away, whether drugs are involved or not. And whether you're obviously doing your responsibilities and being there, even if you make money or not, that's like saying you're not allowed to be a stay-at-home parent anymore. That's like saying we have help for stay-at-home parents, but you need to get a job because your spouse can't pay the bills. You need to get a job because we don't want to pay your bills. So you get put in homelessness, and then we're overran with children in orphanages that apparently they don't have this, this, and this, but you get so funded from the government that you also then have to go cry to a bunch of rich people to get help for these children, while it's like jumping through 500 hoops to even adopt. But you're so overran to the fact that our children are aging out of these orphanages, and some of them ending up homeless and then being pushed into the drugs because of the lack of support and help. Because we just don't care about morality, in my opinion, over observance and seeing what happens to vulnerable, disabled, and geriatrics. Because if you don't have money to be in a old person living place, you get left to the streets. And if you don't have a lawyer or someone to help you to get disability, you have no income at all, while stores literally make it harmfully hurtful to even try to get some sort of money to be able to use the restroom, a public restroom, and say you have to buy something here. Well, that doesn't make it a public restroom, then that makes it a customer restroom. Okay. Like, and then you're willing to arrest people for indecency in public when stores and gas stations won't even let people use the restroom so that they don't get in trouble for that. That's entrapment. You know how much entrapment I've noticed that's going on, and that's completely illegal, and that's a law. But you're allowed to overlook that because you're a leadership of law. And then they put on here a Zoom number. But if I go to try to go on Zoom and something magically happens because we have allowed so much hacking, scamming going on, that I apparently missed court. So now I have to, out of my time and my sobriety and my days, just even trying to focus on my sobriety so that I don't mess up my stability of living, because that seems to be the only resource that you are able to give. But if you don't have a job and the program says we're not paying for you anymore because of the way you are, because I'm not getting help, but yet when I see other newer people come in, certain managers of the sober living were able to jump right on the bandwagon and help them with a job. Okay, so we're not sectioning people out at all. And we're totally being fair with each individual person and who they are. While you want to call it excuses, okay, you're just using these things as an excuse to be able to verbally cut me down. And that's one of the issues that we even have when it comes to being a morally functioning society between each and every individual person. That's saying that I'm not a good enough person to live because I'm not what you want me to be. Instead of going, okay, this is what you're like, this is your strength, this is kind of like the way your personality is, and you would best fit these areas of work. And with these areas of work, what do you choose? And along with these areas of work that you choose, what can we help you with, instead of forcing you through 500 hoops that obviously, if you had the capability to do it, you would have already did it. What can we help you with financially so that you do get there, so that we don't have these issues that we are pushing vulnerable people in, including geriatrics, not being able to either keep holding a job because they're so old, or have a 401k to be able to put them in a nursing home or in a older person's home. Some of them's in nurse or in a home. Like, you know, and we're just going to use drugs and alcohol as a way to, if you deny going into a rehab, but yet I have seen where rehabs have been there only up to this point. Okay, you're sober, now just go get a job. That doesn't fix their issues. But of course, a lot of these people that have money and have had help in the position they are in have not experienced what's actually going on. They're just listening to the clicks of lies, because how can a group of people that's never experienced these things literally know everything about these people and pinpoint them being the problem when they're hoarding everything? Because they're helping each other get jobs, they're helping each other with money, they're helping each other because they are of this system, and they don't want to see anyone of this falling in that category. But then once you're already in that category, you are nothing but something to pick, poke, prod, label, force medications, use them as guinea pigs. Like, and the only reason this is an issue is because you're not going to rehab, or because you're denying doing this, or because you aren't doing this and you aren't doing that. And I'm going, well, neither are you. And I thought you had a job in filling in these issues while you neglect them and just say, oh, it's a negativity, or oh, it's just excuses. Okay, so we have popularized gaslighting and deflection and training professionals to do the same thing, and you don't call it mental malpractice? I started asking the definition of some of these things while an AI was telling me that this is not really malpractice. This is not really against the Eighth Amendment because of this, this, and this. And I'm going, but that's the very definition of what I'm expressing. So, how is it not really that? So, yeah, just in case, like, I end up on the streets and my phone magically gets stolen, or I don't have Wi Fi to be able to go live, I have gotten to the point to where if I end up on the streets and we have all these resources that says they do something and they're not sitting there helping you through these things while you're sitting there trying to bust your way through all of these obstacles and hurdles and constant circles they force you through years, okay? Some of these people live in these programs and these homes for years. And that's not a dysfunction in our own system? Right. Okay. So my result was, I guess, since how my life doesn't matter, but it matters enough for me, then I'm going to go protest in front of the city hall of Jacksonville downtown. Because obviously, this is so much of an issue. You are putting people in jail for sleeping in front of a resource building just to try to get resources and stay away from drugs, while you say you don't have enough funding for certain things. One of the reasons why a psychologist actually got me into a substance abuse program to be able to get in a sober living house. If that was never the issue in the beginning, how is that going to be a resolution to an issue that obviously is still an issue, not just for one person, but for many? While we have advocates constantly trying to stand up for this, while we have people wanting to imprint the fact that I'm just on drugs, or it's just about drugs this, or alcohol this, like, okay, sure. I go to AA because having group therapy is easier to have, and to listen to other people's experiences is a lot more helpful and more accessible than to be able to keep going through therapy, to be able to understand your sense of self and be able to see what even job fits you. Because if you just place these people in these random jobs, obviously, if that was something that worked, it would work. It wouldn't be a falling through the cracks. There wouldn't be geriatrics and other people sleeping in front of resource buildings. While people are telling me it's illegal to protest, but yet I see people protesting for other countries all the time, especially even downtown. So then again, you're going to use sleeping in public as a way to be able to arrest me, because you can't arrest me for actually protesting something. And it says you're allowed to have supplies. You're allowed to leave and get supplies and comes back. And it's a human function to sleep and a human function to use the restroom. But you are a problem to society because certain things don't want to allow you to use the restroom. Like, even the library has been undergoing construction for how long? Because that was one of the main places that a lot of these people used to go to the restroom in. So, yeah, this is a city hall thing to protest. And we are allowed to protest. And the only reason you need a permit is if you have more than 500 people. If you have more than 500 people doing a protest, you have to have a permit according to law. I feel like that's just another way to suppress what we actually wish we could all stand up for, but are being attacked because it endangers those that want to keep their pockets full. Because honestly, if it didn't, then it would do nothing but help. It would help the issues. Like, a lot of you people that work wouldn't have to sit there and see all these freaking people on the side of the road that you so disgustingly don't like to see, and then you just want to put them in jail because our dysfunctions and lack of morality in our own justice system and our leaderships. Because if this wasn't a lack of morality in our leadership of the government, this wouldn't be a lack of morality in our justice system when we are nothing but humans. And this is why cops get away with the things they get away with, because it's like being given a badge to do with whatever you want to do with. But then a lot of them that try to do good get in trouble for doing good, get in trouble for having an understanding in a lot of these things. So, for those of you that care and your heart is hurting over a lot of these injustices as well, and you're an advocate that tried so hard and you're losing hope, I know how that feels. And I'm doing the best I can too, which is one of the reasons why I even in the beginning started going through social media, just to hope and to reach the masses and help them to be able to understand, than to realize everyone already sees it and knows. We've just been so abused, in my opinion, that we're too afraid to stand up for morality in humans, in humanism, in a society that is built off of humans. Like, but okay. So, that is what I would be doing. And if not, and they actually do decide to drop it, because it doesn't make any sense. You're like saying, legally, we're allowed to strip you of your freedom to stand up for vulnerable people. Like, okay. And I've told them, seeing how I have watched you leave a disabled, a geriatric disabled, in the cold, in the rain, to the point to where they could die there, while a shelter doesn't care, that actually has a medical unit tied to it. And I've told them a few times, and they just, oh. I care though. And sometimes I feel like caring is illegal. So I have to go protest my own life in front of a city hall, just not only to help my own life and to care about my own life, but life of many others that are left to die while we use our taxes to be there and help a bunch of people in prison who've taken life, who's hurt children, taken children. P. Diddy almost got out scot-free. And he has that much support while we have a bunch of vulnerable people who's never done that have no support and just get bullied and pointed at and laughed at and hurt, and it turned into chronic. So, because I decided to represent myself and stand up for my own humanity and rights, I could end up going to jail for 2 weeks. And I could lose my sober living place. I could lose everything I am complying to. I even just got a drug test. Granted, I've only not smoked weed for 29 days, and someone did tell me it takes sometimes almost a month and a half, but the line is faint. So I was like, good, that means that's like completely almost out of my system, and that it's like that because THC sits on your fat cells. But everything else is clear. And I'm clear. And if I truly did smoke and didn't comply to the support that I'm trying to comply to while standing up for my own human rights and others on top of that. So being an advocate as well, I could lose everything. That's setting people up for failure. And because I'm such an in-depth, different person, that it's very difficult for me to emotionally and physically, because I have a genetic joint condition. I have injured myself, and I had experimental surgery done on my knee here in downtown Jacksonville. And I went to the hospital over trying to do my job right, overworking myself and breaking myself doing it. And then disability saying that you don't have enough proof. You set a lot of people up for failure, while so many people want to sit there and say it's drugs or say you're just a dysfunction upon society, just completely down you, and chronically neglect their own responsibilities as leaders. That is chronically creating trauma amongst your people. So I don't see how you can say that's not doing harm upon the very people you say you protect. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I hope you have a wonderful New Year's, or had a wonderful New Year's. And it's on the 15th at 9 a.m. Courtroom 404, Jacksonville, Florida. For any advocates out there. Because if they take this from me, even though I'm complying and caring about my sobriety, I probably should have kept that UA cup drug test just to prove it. Because sometimes it's hard to trust people who are in authority, because sabotage. You know how much sabotaging? A lot of you know how much sabotaging is going on. But if we don't have people speaking up, it keeps happening. And as we've seen, and statistically, it just gets worse. And And I'm not saying we should go total anarchy and hurt each other even more. I'm actually speaking about the fact that we should not be hurting each other like this, including like verbally. We should be supporting one another. And that's what a leader represents, right? Isn't that part of a leader's responsibility? To lead by example and to be a good example of what your society should support one another. It takes a team. You have to have teamwork in a job to be able to have that job function. You need cogs in a machine for that machine to be able to function. If you take all the cogs out, the machine can't work. If you take all your employees away from your idea and your industry, if all of them just happen to jump out of a window, how do you have an industry? You go bankrupt. And then you find a loophole through that bankruptcy and then get more people that don't know what happened just to keep the dysfunction going, even though clearly what you're doing is a dysfunction, while we use Christianity to hurt people and to down people and to condemn them and to make them feel less than, and that there's something completely evil just because they're speaking about humanity and heart and caring. I don't know about y'all if you've read your Bible, but that's a lot of the lessons that Jesus spoke about. Being there for one another. While y'all use it, blasphemy. That's true blasphemy. Using a name completely against its own moral lessons to harm, to manipulate, to suppress. Much love, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see y'all, of course, more than likely, probably before the 15th, because boy, do I love being a content creator. And that was one of the things the AI was like, well, with all the qualities I have been able to see from you, content creating would be one of those things. And I said, well, how can I financially live if this is not supporting me? So the things that can be a job doesn't financially support these people that are of such depth, and that those that create content that is abusive, harmful, hurting animals, causing issues in a relationship with money gets supported so much more than the real aspect of what we're neglecting to do for each and every one another. Yeah, before I keep going, because I tend to do that. Much love, y'all. Till next time.